And I'm thinking that you are the most interesting Liberty Republican that our viewers have never heard of. What animates you? Why are you doing this?
I think what animates me is, again, I have a deep philosophical conviction of the concept of individual liberty and human freedom. And so when you look at government, especially the modern political narrative within the United States, it seems to be varying degrees of statism. And when I look at what free people are allowed to or able to accomplish when government is there to protect their liberty and their property rights, instead of trying to micromanage or trying to fix or develop solutions from DC or wherever else it may be, again, it's just incredible what people can accomplish.
You are a two-term Iraq veteran.
That's correct.
You served in special forces. I feel like that has somehow equipped you for your new foray into politics.
So the interesting thing about Army Special Forces or Green Berets is that the primary focus is unconventional warfare and counterinsurgency. And so, yeah, I always say it's amazing how training in those two things prepare you for domestic politics in the current environment.
But you're bringing liberty back to the Republican Party in Virginia. You're a first-time delegate. Mm-hmm. You're brand new to politics, and I feel like Virginia is sort of a microcosm for the same fights that we have within the Republican Party and obviously with the Democrats in D.C.
No, very much so. I think that the country as a whole and the Republican Party is at a crossroads right now where we're either going to go back toward the Rockefeller brand of republicanism, which is basically we're better at managing the train wreck than everybody else, or we're going to go to a more liberty-based version of the Republican Party and the Republican philosophy.
It is irresponsible and dangerous to continue to put America further into debt.
And I don't think there's any future in the Rockefeller narrative. I think we have to be a party that understands that you can't fix everything through government force and coercion, that genuine liberty and genuine freedom is about living and let live. It's about coexistence, is resisting the urge to coerce those whom you can't convince. And I think that when we get back to that core fundamental of the Republican Party, I think that's a winning message because I think it's inherently American and inherently conservative. But again, if the path we're going down, which is just let us manage the federal government as it continues to expand, as it continues to increase debt, that's just not a Republican Party I'm interested in. Quite frankly, I don't think it's a Republican Party the American people are very interested in. After my second tour in Iraq, I think one of the things that really impacted me was watching Barack Obama get elected while I was overseas. And it wasn't the anti-war narrative that really bothered me. I actually understood why people would be frustrated with our involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan. What really bothered me was this idea that what was wrong with this country was fundamentals. And when President Obama said that he wanted to fundamentally change the country.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America.
I took him very serious at that, and I found it very disturbing because I've always thought that the greatest thing about this nation were our fundamentals. The problems are when we fail to live up to them. And I think that's when I realized that in some way, shape, or form, I wanted to be more involved within the political process. Not necessarily in elected office, but I wanted to be involved in making the argument for why constitutional government, ordered liberty was the direction that we should be, and we should be proud of it as Americans. Because it's not a philosophy which is a simple luck of geography, regardless of where you came from, regardless of who your parents were. If that's your philosophy, it's inherently American, and I think it's a wonderful thing, and I wanted to fight for it. And so I got involved in the Republican Party, started helping other candidates run. The first time I was asked to run for office, I said no.
Which was the rational response.
Which was exactly the rational response. But the second time around, I got asked to do it, and I did see an opportunity to be able to argue for a particular brand of republicanism that I thought was very important and that I was afraid was being lost.
So were there politicians that inspired you to finally make the jump into politics?
There are certainly politicians that I admire. Within the American political tradition, Calvin Coolidge, which you don't hear a whole lot from people, but I honestly think he was arguably the best president of the 20th century.
I want the people of America to be able to work less for the government and more for themselves. I want them to have the rewards of their own industry. This is the chief meaning of freedom.
I found Ronald Reagan very inspiring as well.
You know, the policies that our opponents and those who follow the liberal philosophy have espoused have distorted the balance between the different branches and levels of government. They've distorted also the relationship of the people to their government.
But again, I don't, and obviously going back to Jefferson, Madison, Washington, especially the Jeffersonian philosophy and approach toward government. But all in all, I'm not overly enamored with politicians. I don't think politicians are made from finer clay. I'm motivated by my faith, and I'm motivated by a conviction in what I believe to be the truth with respect to human nature and how government should interact with it. And so there's been a whole wide range of influential people, whether it be friends and family, politicians, or just great thinkers.
So people that don't know you, how do we brand you? Are you a constitutional conservative? Are you a liberty Republican?
I think probably the most accurate is a liberty-minded conservative, because that really speaks to an inherent philosophy. Because it's great to talk about the Constitution. I love the Constitution, but there were certain ideas and philosophical principles that made the Constitution possible. And those, I think, are rooted in the concept of liberty. When I think of, obviously, the Constitution, I'm talking about a contract that was signed by the states and the federal government in the creation of the federal government. And I look at it as a legally binding document. I think it's interesting when Supreme Court justices talk about how the Constitution evolves or based off of evolving standards of decency, or it's a living document. And I always look at it as, no, it's a legal document. I'm pretty sure if your bank came in and told you that, hey, we're going to raise the percentage rate on your mortgage because of evolving standards of decency, I'm pretty sure the Supreme Court justices would be pretty upset by that. So it's a contract. That's what the Constitution is, and that's incredibly important, especially as we look at the 9th and 10th Amendments with respect to what is the scope of the federal government and what is the role that it is supposed to play in our lives. And it's actually supposed to be very limited. It's very important, but it's very limited. And the more the federal government grows beyond that contractual obligation that it's signed with the states, the more it not only perverts the things that it's supposed to do, but it really fails the American people as a result. That's what I mean when I think of the Constitution, and when I think of just liberty in general, or that concept. It really is based off the premise that I have a right to pursue happiness in accordance with what my definition of happiness is, insofar as it doesn't infringe on your right to do the same thing. And that's a pretty basic definition, but I think it's profound.